Hello and welcome to the Hold Up TV, the content channel bringing you the content creators behind the content you enjoy. Tonight, I am truly blessed to be with a guest that has done a lot for this community, this space on YouTube. He is a pioneer in regards to content creation. I would even say he's a guerrilla content creator. Long before the vestige of the internet was something that any of us knew anything about, this brother was out there plugging away, making it possible for people coming behind him to do the exact same thing. I would love to introduce you to my guest and author of Raised by Wolves, Old Guns. I'm sorry, I got that. Old Gangsters, Young Guns.
Young Guns, yes.
Young Guns. Also the founder and creator of Don Diva Publications and a real advocate for criminal reform in that space. Let me introduce you to Cavario H. How you doing, brother?
I'm very well. Very well.
Man, I gotta tell you, thank you for coming, man. We're when I say we, I'm using the Queen's English right now. We, as in me, are a very small channel, but this is a true blessing to get you on, and I know that you're a busy man, so thank you first and foremost for coming on, man, and giving us your time.
I appreciate the opportunity, man.
So I'm gonna get the fan stuff out of the way first, right? Whenever I interview people, I go as deep as humanly possible into everything they've done. So I've watched nearly every video that you have on YouTube, right? I've done as many Google searches as anyone can possibly do. I don't have the physical books, but I have the digital versions, and they're marked up with yellow. So thank God that I don't have the physical books, because it would be absolutely worthless at this point. I would have to buy 2 other copies just to get you to sign into it. But I want to get started, because I know that every story has a beginning, middle, and your end is yet to be written. Let's talk about your beginning, man. Where you from? How did it all get started for you?
How did all of what?
All of this, being a journalist, being a content creator, a creative, someone that's been chronologing the things that you have for this many years. How did you get started in that space, man?
From my journalist career, or my career as a journalist, began quite unintentionally in December of 1999. This is getting back to the Don Diva thing. There was a promo for a entertainment company that my ex and I were doing with a couple of other people, and then I came up with the name Don Diva for this entertainment company, and when we made a promo for the entertainment company, it looked like a magazine, not a very well done magazine, but it had all of the earmarks of a magazine. It had like a cover and pages and pictures inside and so forth. So it was just pictures of people from like the 80s and 90s in Harlem. And it took off. I got like 500 copies of it, and it took off. It really took off. And then people started asking me for it. A friend of mine walked up to me and asked me he said he liked that magazine. And I was like, what magazine? And he was like, the Don Diva Magazine. And that was the first time I heard the words put together. But when he said it, I heard like a little bell go off in the back of my head. And I was like, yeah. So, I'd been writing for on average 8 hours a day for 2 years, a little over 2 years. I'd been working on what turned out to be my autobiography. And the work that I was doing on that autobiography, for me, it was a catharsis. It was an introspection. It was my diary. And in writing my story and starting from my earliest memories, I made myself aware of the fact that I'd survived a lot of things that a lot of people don't survive. And it was because I was telling my story and including the people who were around, and the fact that they were, I found myself saying at the end of a chapter, peaceful journey to this one, peaceful journey to that one, like that. And, this is in my diary form. And because, I'm making peace with my past. To give that context, I was in the streets from 1980 to 1997. I retired at the age of 30 from the streets. I started at the age of 13. And at the point at which I'd made this decision to walk away from the only thing that I'd ever known and ever did, because I never had a job or anything like that, I just did that. I was born into a family that does that. And did that. And the breaking away from that and making a peace with that, it really brought forth a lot of things that had been buried, a lot of trauma and so forth, a lot of mental rewrites that were now coming back. And now that I'm in this stream of connecting with my past, it was starting to come back and really be clear to me. And it began to put a lot of things into context for me as it related to my behaviors and so forth. So that's where the Raised by Wolves came from, the book, my autobiography. But the concept that ended up being Don Diva, that concept was born of the fact that I was telling peripherally the stories of my friends whose outcomes, many of them I put in Don Diva.
So it's interesting, man, because I remember the inception of Don Diva. I don't want to I'm not going to do that thing, but I do remember the inception of Don Diva, and growing up in that era, there were a few other magazine publications that were out there. And not to disparage anyone else's publication, but Don Diva stood out in a different way because it was allowed to maneuver in spaces that, say, the Source wasn't allowed to maneuver in, that, say, Vibe magazine wasn't allowed to maneuver in. Did that feel good to be able to have that distinction, to have that level of authenticity and being able to say, hey, I understand what this group is doing, but here I'm bringing you something that's a little different? That feel good? Tell me about that.
Yeah, it felt very good. That for me, it was a feeling of positive purposefulness, which I had a great value for. I'd always had a great value for that. I just never really seized opportunities in a real way prior to this time. So when I was in the streets, I was as decent a human being as one can be and be neck deep in the streets. I truly was, and so I did my best to be my best, even under those circumstances, And, I paid for college educations and kept people, in their homes. And, I helped a lot of people. I probably facilitated the hurting of way more people, because of the simple fact that I was facilitating their access to, something that would ultimately, undo them, or at least, defer their dreams for a very long time. I've seen people come all the way back, I've helped a few, but, it felt different, a different type of purposefulness. It felt like I was actually able to, be my best self and not have to concern myself with drawing too much attention to myself. This is the first time in my life I'd ever done anything legitimate ever. So it really did feel good. And then to be able to bring that authenticity, like you mentioned, to be able to step into a space at that time, hip hop was really getting heavily into the street thing. And, everybody's a gangster and they're rapping, but, they're rapping gangsters and, rapping, street dudes and stuff like that. And, it was making that choice it was romanticizing it. Right. The hip hop hyperbole was making it look like a very attractive choice to make. And that is, if I were a white supremacist organization, I would understand that the most effective weapon in keeping the melanated man from taking his rightful place in this world would be to perpetuate these ideas, these self-destructive, deprecating ideas about himself, and to keep making him think that, up is down, in is out, left is right, because that's all. It's just they've given our community this idea where everything is the opposite of what it actually is.
That's deep. It's funny because one of my favorite quotes in one of your Mind Plug series is that you were recounting a story to someone. You said the nature of a thing is the nature of a thing, and the suggestion being there that a thing will always live up to its nature. It might try to go counter to that, but it will eventually at some point return to that. And it's funny that you bring up hip hop, and we're talking about culture versus hip hop. What are your thoughts on that? I had a few brothers that were on a few weeks ago, and I asked them, I was like, can you explain to me what it means when someone says, I did it for the culture, or I'm doing it for the culture? What culture are they talking about, and how would you identify that?
Oh, well, for me to speak on what culture individuals who make statements like that might be talking about would be purely speculative, because I don't, there's not my generation. They're not even my generation. A lot of them, there's only a small group of them that I really connect with. You know what I'm saying? You know the people who I connected with and who were, you know them, so you know what it is with that. Yeah. So, but I watch, so I could make a relatively educated or informed guess about that. I think they think they're talking about Black culture.
Okay.
I think that's what they think they're talking about. Because is hip hop synonymous with Black culture? The origins of hip hop are synonymous with Black culture. I was present for that, for its inception, and I was very much ensconced in it from its inception in every aspect, everything it was, the graffiti writing, and I mean heavy with everything, all those things, even the things that have the stuff that's always kind of been around, the negative stuff. I was a part of that. I mean, like I said, I was a 13-year-old drug dealer who carried 2 guns every day. You know what I'm saying? I was a pretty severe young person, as I mean, you would know. But it isn't. It's like what I was just saying. It's like if there were an organization or even an idea that proliferated several organizations for various reasons, whether it be nominal gain or some sort of devious agenda, nefarious agenda. If it's a mindset amongst a group that is in a position of power and influence to keep a certain group in a disparate condition for profit and for control and security, and they've created the idea of culture for you, then realistically you don't know what you're doing it for. That's what I think.
Man, I hope someone heard that. Someone needed to hear that right now. I'm gonna pull it back because I jumped a little bit ahead because we talked about Don Diva. I think it's always good to be a fan of something when you're talking to someone about something. So let me just tell you from a fan's perspective about Don Diva, right? So being someone that grew up peripherally, like too young to really grasp it, but seeing it and you would just see it, it's kind of like the best way to describe it is like, holy smokes, someone just dropped a street Bible in front of me. Right. And you look at it, you're looking through the pictures. You don't realize you're being exposed to a bunch of things. What stood out to me as a younger person at the time was the photos. Right now, I've seen this style of photography most of my entire life, but to see it in the publication was the first thing that threw me, like just to see the grittiness of it. Right, to see the rawness of the photo. Now, sometimes when people say
it was meant to do that, it was meant to shock you.
So when some people say gritty or they say rawness, what they're doing is they don't have the ability to really attach to what's going on. But I'm quite honestly, I remember one of the first ones I saw, and I was like, man, like that was that's really right there in that moment. And I was trying to explain it to some friends of mine. They were like, no, I don't think it is, Steve. I'm like, no, you don't understand. It absolutely is. They took that photo right in that moment, and that's beautiful. Being someone that was on the front lines or something like that and being able to create Don Diva, man, is there anything that you wish you could have done differently, or is there anything, if you could do it over again, you wish you were like, hey, you know what, I would have done this to make it better?
Yeah. Well, first thing is, and I guess most important thing is, I would have come into it with the understanding that the money was made from the advertisement.
Right.
I came into it with a drug dealer's mentality. So I came into it with the mentality of, I'm gonna get a package, and I'm gonna cut this package, and this package is gonna be the bombest package to hit the streets, in years.
Right.
And they're gonna come and they're gonna buy this package and they're gonna line up, and I'm gonna click, and then I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna re-up, and I'm gonna set up and open up another block. Then I'm gonna go to another city and I'm gonna open up. So basically, I was taking the magazine and doing with the magazine what I had been doing with drugs for almost 2 decades.
Right.
Because that was the extent of my understanding as it related to anything business. Right.
Right.
So when I maybe got to my second issue, right, I was talking to Russell Simmons. I've known Russell since the days of Disco Fever back in the early 80s, I guess. It was 82, 81, 83, something like that. So we used to be in the Disco Fever back in the days. I used to sell coke. He used to buy coke, So that's how it goes.
He talked about it. He talked about it in his book. Maybe not that exact interaction, but yeah.
That's how it goes. I'm sure he talked about the leak too. I'm sure he talked about the leak, because we ain't calling Rush for nothing. He's always in a rush. Leaky. I know you like to get wet.
Yeah. Thank you, Denzel, for that moment.
But he's the one that said to me, Cavario, you got to get some ads, man. It's a nice magazine. You got to get some ads. That's money. And I was like, oh shit. So my approach to that, as it related to the construction of the magazine, or the production of the magazine, I was looking at that again, not from a publisher or journalistic perspective. I was looking at it from the perspective of a consumer. And I remember when my dudes had the Source magazine, and they would have, this is at the height of it, they would have like maybe 25 pages of ads right at the beginning of the magazine, and that would drive me nuts, man. I would hate that. So my thing was, I'm not going to do that. You know what I'm saying? And I really thought that was sustainable as a business model, as it relates to magazines, not realizing that is the life's blood of a publication. So to answer your question, what would I have done differently? It would have been, I would not have created one copy of that magazine before I had secured at least 1 year's worth. That would be 4 issues, because we were quarterly. 1 year's worth of advertisement, enough to cover my expenses, maybe be able to bring some people on who had some experience, you know what I'm saying, and be able to plug and play with that, you know. And I would have done that, because what happened after the fact, right? After I created the after I created the magazine and put it out, a couple of issues, whatever. it was like now people have made some kind, because it's hot, so people are
Right.
talking about it, and it's making its way all through the offices everywhere. And I'm at the time I'm in all of the urban clothing company offices on a regular basis. You know, people didn't know whether I worked at Academics or at LRG or at what's Puff's line? Sean John.
Yeah.
I was always at the showrooms, always, pushing to get ads. Once I got, understanding of that, right? All the record labels. I was in all the record labels, you know, and any other business that it seemed to make sense to advertise in the magazine. But at the point at which I brought the magazine to them and talked to them about advertising, they'd made a decision about what they thought the magazine was, one way or the other.
Right.
They'd made a decision. So if they made a decision that it doesn't fit them, what I came to find eventually was that at the point at which corporations make the decision that something doesn't fit them, they generally or usually they won't look back.
Right.
They won't check back to see whether you've evolved to a point where you now, are more palatable or whatever. They ain't gonna do that. It's like, you don't even know what that is. And they may have a general idea because it is what it is, but it's not what you do, but how you do it.
Right.
Right. So the more I learned, the better I got at doing it, the cleaner it became. But it still maintained its essence, what gave it that authenticity that you spoke of earlier. So that was really important, and I should have understood that from the beginning of the advertisements, and I should have created advertisement packages specially targeting whomever it was that I was trying to get a ad from. So if it was a clothing company, then I should only show them the aspects of the magazine that would be of interest to them for whatever reason. Whatever kind of business it was, whatever kind of, corporation it was, I should only have presented to them a package that shows them, gives them a general idea of the magazine, but nothing that they would have to try and figure out, well, what does that mean in relationship to, our product or whatever have you? Because I understand what their concerns would be, right? So I would never present, their product in such a way. There were people whose articles I didn't put near certain advertisements or certain other articles because I wanted to, keep that line between them, defined. You know what I'm saying? Because I understood those nuances, and so I would have done that. I would have created those packages. That would have saved me a lot of wear and tear. Let me tell you.
Because as it goes, man, if I remember correctly, and from my research, you were pretty much distributing on your own, like getting it out there on your own. I know there were other key players in the scenario that definitely helped build it up, but I saw one story that
who were these key players?
I think one person I've heard you say that you've given credit to was your ex, right? And I believe yes.
Her, and there was a young lady, her name was Susan Hampstead.
Yes.
Susan was with us at the beginning.
Right. But
at the beginning, and Susan was putting in work. She was writing, doing interviews, she was really getting down,
I think you missed another person. I seem to remember a story about you sleeping and driving a young man that was driving you across state. Maybe two of them. They probably share your DNA, but they were key players, and I thought that was a hard.
Yes, my sons were definitely there, and also your older brother.
Yes. The cat's out of the bag now, folks. Cavario is he's my older cousin, and that's why this interview means so much to me, man, because what it really means is It's a chance.
It went pretty far without this coming out.
Yeah, we got
I was
pretty
trying to, like, how do I'm trying not to say anything or give it away. You haven't said anything.
No, we got pretty far in it, but I think that so that's obviously beyond the family level. My attachment to Don Diva was just watching, in retrospect now, looking at it, watching an African American male build something like that. We hear a lot is put on about creating black businesses and supporting black businesses, but then sometimes people don't show up, right? And black businesses still have to show up for themselves. I think that's one of the early lessons that I learned from watching you with Don Diva is even when you're taking care of people, even when you're present in the community, maybe the community won't fully show up or maybe the investors won't be there, but will you continue to show up for your business? And that's something that was validated again. Memory gets hazy as you grow up, but as I was redoing my research, reintroducing myself to you, I was like, wow, he really did give it his all in this scenario to actually build something legacy like, man. And I want to congratulate you on that because it is legacy worthy. But now that I'm done praising you, right, I'm gonna backtrack you a little bit, man. So you had mentioned your novel, your autobiography, right, Raised by Wolves, and the cathartic process of that. Go for it. There it is. And you would you like talking about that being a cathartic process, man. Are you familiar with the term in regards to addiction, that addiction is a family disease, and the only way to treat that family disease is to treat each part of that family, helping them to find out what their roles in it? When I was
familiar with that, that's so important for what I do. What we'll talk about later, but that's very, very important. That's why this system has to be reconfigured.
Yeah.
This it has to be exposed. It has to be made very visible, and then the correction can at least begin.
Yeah, the healing can take place. I'm gonna set it up, and this is poor journalism on my part, but now that the cat's out of the bag. So obviously, reading Raised by Wolves had a very cathartic effect on me. When you're the youngest in any scenario, and I wasn't the youngest, but I was probably the most removed, reading it from someone else's vantage point. There are moments where you read, and I put the book down. Right, I read and then I put it down because I'm learning something new. I'm seeing something new. I'm experiencing something new. But talk to me about that process, man. Like, so where did it start? Was it just the idea, like, hey, this is therapeutic, I'm gonna write about what I've been through, or was it something else?
No, it was really therapy. I'd been reading at that point. In '95, I started reading. This is when me and my ex were still together. '95, yeah, because we bought the house in '96 in Atlanta. So, we were in Virginia Beach, and she gave me a book. It was Monster by Sanyika Shakur, right? And I remember thinking, if this guy could write about his life, considering what he had written. He'd been to prison, but he wrote a lot of very personal things. He wrote a lot of very dark things, and I was like, wow, he could write about his life. I could definitely write about mine.
Right.
But I wasn't thinking about writing about my life. I was just saying, like, that's how it hit me, and because I was still in the streets. So the farthest I was still very much. I don't know if I'd say I was still very much indoctrinated by what your father and his generation, and then my mother and her generation indoctrinated into me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? But I definitely did not even consider breaking away from that grain, the code, the omerta, like that, that you do remember they were really, nice and kindly to you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You were the little baby, whatever, but
Yeah.
like those were some hardcore people, bro. I don't know if you ever really, you know, I can't imagine a scenario in which you got to really see that. But my mother and them were very, very, very hardcore. And your father and that generation were very, very hardcore, bro. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like by today's standards, they would be like every kind of crazy people can think of.
Yeah.
You know? And so, you know, to be indoctrinated in that mindset and to consider writing anything and letting the public see it is like I'm gonna grow another head.
Yeah.
You know? But I began when I read that story, it opened me up in ways I didn't realize.
Would you say while writing this book, was there any euphoric recall or traumatic recall while you were writing this book and going through it?
Let me see. You see how thick this book is?
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Kidding me? You know, through a lot of the process, I talked to people that grew up with me and spent a large part of my developmental years by my side. So they were there for a great many of the events in my life. And of course, your father was a major component of that. When there was a point where people used to call me Little Reno, because I told them to. When I was a kid, there was a point I wanted to be him.
Right.
He was the coolest, the baddest, toughest, and you know, he would do whatever he wanted to do. And you know, I didn't really have context because I could only see it from the bottom, you know, being
right.
a little kid. I'm talking about little kid, you know, because he was like 14 when I was born. And when I was born, he was right like there, you know,
right.
like he was living with us, you know. So, you know, he was a major influence, and he was a fool, so not very good, not very good that he was an influence, but you know, I learned a lot from him. A lot of what I learned was probably not to do things the way he did things, but that served me tremendously. I didn't realize that was the impact of him on me. Because of the reverence I had for him, I had rewritten the way that narrative went. So at the point at which he was working with me in, you know, later on in life, as opposed to, you know, working with other members of our family, or primarily he worked under his father, who worked for my mother. His father and my mother. His father was my mother's oldest brother, and your grandfather. He was her security, his mom's security. And when he got killed, then your father, you know, he kind of fell in place. He was already running around. He was already, you know, working or whatever have you. But he kind of stepped into that position, you know, where he's her first security, because he was a fool. He was a fool, man. He was a crazy motherfucker back then. You know, he really was. And he always, like, he be fighting 2-3 guys and be whipping their ass, man. Be smacking motherfuckers to the ground, like open hand smacking. So, open hand smack a grown man to the ground, and then another man come and he open hand smack him to the ground. And you know what I mean? Like, and I would see this, you know, I see this in the neighborhood. Like, you know, we'd be in the block, we'd be on 15th Street, and I was all in the mix very young. Thanks largely to him and my sister Gail. And yeah, and Bernard. Yeah, so it was a lot of influence, you know, from that. So much so that I dedicated my book to him.
I saw that.
Yeah. It said, this book is dedicated to Stephen Reno Holder, who said, rule number 1, bear no witness. Rule number 2, bear no witness. Rule number 3, bear no motherfucking witness.
An adage he still uses today. He even explained it to one of his grandsons, but in a PG version. But,
He's still a great influence on children, I'm sure.
Yeah, actually, you know what's interesting is watching him be a grandfather is an amazing thing, because when he does get a chance to come up here and visit, and he is playing with them, it's proof. It's proof to the concept that you can change, right? I see the love that comes off of him, but at the same time,
he loves being a grandfather.
Yeah, I'm like, same time he will kick one of these kids in the butt if they get if they get out of line. Mathis, Poppy. But let me ask you a question. So but more importantly about you, you're writing this book, you're outlining this, you're going through these events in your life. It is my belief that there are certain times where we don't understand what we're mixed up in, and psychologically we protect ourselves and maybe other people protect us. And we look back at the past like, well, this was the system. This is the system I grew up in. Who are you to tell me that this system wasn't normal? This is my normal. Was there ever a point while you were writing the book where you just look back and you kind of lean back and go, wow, not normal, not the way it was supposed to be different? Or was there a process when you were younger before the book where you kind of started seeing through these gaps? No.
Nah, I don't think so. I grew up with my heroes.
Right.
Your father was a superhero to me. My mother was a superhero to me. All those other people whom you may not remember. Charlie, Al, Bernard, so many people, you may not remember them. Some of them may. What year were you born?
81.
Okay. Yeah, so Bernard was already gone. He's already gone. Bernard and Reno were like peanut butter and jelly, Batman and Robin, Starsky and Hutch. Those are the two of them together. I mean, you read about them in the book.
Yeah.
In Wolves. Two of them together was unbelievable, bro. They was something else. Like Steve always says, your dad always says, people used to bet which one of us, they used to bet on which one of us was going to get killed first, him or Bernard. And he said, all those people who were making those bets are dead.
It's crazy to think, man, because he's more of a mystery to me than you were initially, right? And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. It's just here's a perfect working example. We're going completely off script here. When I was living in California, right, I had basically begun to live my own life outside of the shadow of my family, and I was just like, I'm just gonna do what I got to do on my own, right? Actually, in preparing for this interview, I had a few raw moments where it was just kind of like, and I've been in a place where I'm like, man, these guys did this, and this, but I had to do this, and this on my own, right? You know what I'm saying? And it was just like, because I'm Chubsy Ubsy, or because I was the nice kid, but it was I still had to do my thing to make my way in the world. But I remember being in LA and I was trying to explain why I was so shell shocked to people, and and they were like, well, why are you so apathetic? And I was like, it's not that I'm apathetic at all. I'm actually quite in tune. I love people. I love being around people. I just know that you people have never experienced anything before. I'm like, the most you know about your family is that maybe your granddad did something strange back in the day. I could tell you honestly that you could come to one of my family events and every person would treat you with a level of respect, a modicum of decency. But you would start to pick up on after a while that maybe you didn't quite fit in spite of the nicety. The same way a dog might feel when people allow him to come around and eat. Like, they'll let you chill and they'll make you feel. I've brought in plenty of people around my family before. I famously walked through Fort Washington, somewhere in the Bronx, to meet my pops. And this is when I was really just trying to be different. And I had green hair. and it's me and my best friend. He told you about this. And I was doing anything to get back at the old man at this point, right? And I'm just like, I would just show up to places just to see what his reaction was. And then I remember when your book came out, and I told one of my friends about the book, and they were like, have you read it? And I was like, no, because it's more like the same way Jews keep the Torah in an oral tradition. I know most of these stories, so it's not a reason for me to read it. But I got the book from my friend. I was like, you should read it, though, because I know that you think I'm a pathological liar. I'm like, you should definitely read it. And I remember the impact it had on her reading the book. How many people have come up to you? And I promised myself I wasn't going to take you to these obvious places, but how many people have come up to you and have done that thing they do when they read about your life and they're like, I can't believe this happened to you? Is that that has to be a common occurrence?
Yeah. When it first came out, people who had known me for years,
Right.
really meaning people who knew me from the point at which I became a public figure by way of Don Diva's notoriety, right? And that, I was doing that, Don Diva, and then after Don Diva, did Hip Hop Weekly. So, I was in that space where my pictures constantly being taken and stuff like that for a long, long, long time. And so a lot of people got to know me, and you would see me all the time because I was always in the places and stuff like that. So people really got the sense that they knew me. And I did a lot of work to make myself seem more accessible,
Right.
because I understood the value of having pro-social skills.
Right.
So that's where the nature of a thing is the nature of a thing comes from. The rest of it is, it does not change by virtue of its view.
Right.
So just because I look this way, I just look this way. You understand?
Yeah.
I just sound this way. Foolish people think that the kind of people that they have been warned about,
Right.
wear signs or drag their knuckles on the ground and slob at the mouth. That's what they think, And, those people exist, but most of those people are in prison because they didn't know how to assimilate. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But the nature of a thing is the nature of a thing, and it does not change by virtue of its view. So the people who would come up to me, who had seen me, 1,000 times over the years, and addressed me commonly. So when I say that, most people don't know my age. Not that I ever kept it a secret, but people, they just look at me and they don't see my time.
Right.
So they just assume from the point that we meet one another that we're peers, we're age-wise peers. So when they read the book, it goes from whenever they see me going, yo, what's up? What's going on? Nigga, what's happening? Yeah, what's up? Yeah, we all right, my man. To, hey, what's up, big homie? It was good to see you, man. Always respect, man. Salute. Man. And I was like, what the hell happened?
Yeah.
And then it started to hit me. I said, oh, he read the book.
Yeah.
He read the book, because this is totally different now. Now it feels like you're talking to me.
Right.
Like you really know what I am. You know what I'm saying? That's what it seems like. That's what it seemed like. And then, of course, it started to become apparent. My brother's like, yo, I read the book. Yo, I never would have known, bro. I didn't even know you were that old, bro. Like, yo, I thought you was like my age. I thought you was like 32. I didn't know, yo, you like my mother's age, yo. I'm like, I got kids older than you, And so I do get that. I definitely do get that. And it's it is kind of how would I say, it's pleasant. It's pleasant, not because I want to be recognized for my capacity for calamity, not at all.
Right.
Because I would like to be accepted in my total self. You dig? Like, I like the idea that people would really have a scope of understanding of the gamut of my capabilities as a being, and be all right with me. You know what I mean? But most people, their hearts or their minds aren't right. So the last thing they want to do is put themselves in a position where they may say or do the wrong thing, and maybe it might result in them having to deal with some severe repercussions. You know what I'm saying? So it became necessary to turn down the volume on those aspects of my personality and turn up the volume on the aspects of my personality that would give me access to greater opportunities in life, so I can be more than just a gangster nigga.
But that's the paradigm shift, isn't it? It's and I think that's the most interesting. And for me personally, reading Raised by Wolves, it's like I don't think that people can see that the book is past tense, right? And it details past events, and I don't want to say that it's a coming of age book, but it shows where
it is.
Yeah,
it is, by definition, it is a coming of age book. It's the first 30 years of my life. It's 67. When I was being born into an organized crime family, a very violent, organized crime family, and that didn't exclude family members. They fell on the wrong side of a situation,
right?
And then, I evolved through that, and spent my entire childhood in that life.
Yeah.
And then in 97, I retired at 30 years old. So it's 67 to 97. That's why the subtitle is Inside the Life and Mind of a Guerrilla Hustler. Inside the life is the truth. Here's the reality of what that life is like. Right. Nothing like the rap records make it sound in most instances. Some people do tell the truth. But even in telling that truth, they tell it in such a way as to be entertaining. And in being entertaining, they romanticize it. So even when they tell the harshest aspects of it, they still put something on it that makes it attractive to people who are fatalistic, which is a lot of us, because we're traumatized.